There comes a time when you have to accept responsibility for your actions. You have to own your part in what you do, what you say, how you walk, how you talk. My spirit told me many months ago, a few months ago rather, that something was wrong with the storyline pertaining to the Idaho 4. I had no knowledge of the children. I had no knowledge of their friends. I did not know them. Never been to the Pacific Northwest. Don't know anything about Idaho. Didn't know anything about the people they fraternized with. And the one thing I did not do was pass gossip about the kids, their friends, family, exes, whomever. It's the one thing I did not bring to my network was gossip, because I don't rock like that. Every blue moon I may repeat something that I heard, but I don't put my stamp on it. But this new information pertaining to Xana and Ethan allegedly dying last, if that is true. This Reddit post by Ethan Chapin's sister-in-law saying that Dylan heard screams, scuffles, which were not mentioned in the affidavit. If I am to believe this person, then that means she gave different versions to different people. The fact that she called someone, do not know the time she called someone, because that hasn't been verified either, to come to the house. That would lead me to believe she heard everything in that house on the morning of November 13th. And I have to ask Dylan Mortensen, how could you abandon your so-called friends knowing they were in distress? What type of human doesn't doubt 911? You can come up with 1,000 excuses. You can spin the story 1,000 ways. But what you can't do is explain what's supposed to be common sense. You see, I knew something wasn't right when I played audio from the captain. And he said one thing that stuck with me to let me know that you knew more than what you said to law enforcement. He said the call came from inside of the house, the 911 call, and that someone else called 911, and it was not a roommate. It was not you, Dylan, and it was not Bethany. And that told the story right there. Someone spoke on your behalf, and Bethany's behalf, that allegedly this incident took place outside. You falling out, one of you was hysterical. And I always said that didn't sound right to me. People running up to these two people standing outside in the cold, one on the ground and one incoherent. And it's not to say that we don't have good Samaritans, that somebody wouldn't run up and ask somebody, what's wrong? Why are you screaming? Why are you hollering? Why are you crying? But my spirit told me it didn't sound right. And you know why it didn't sound right? Because it was a messenger. And the queen knew better. Why is there a messenger running to social media to speak on their behalf? Because they should know they shouldn't be talking, because it was an ongoing investigation. Now we have this Reddit post to contradict basically the version you gave in a report to the police. You thought a dog was being played with by Kaylee. Okay? Opening and closing doors. Were you inebriated or sober? Were you under the influence of any type of narcotics, drugs? Why are you opening and closing doors? Because that makes no sense to me. You hear someone say, someone's here. You also hear whimpering. You also see a masked man in this house that you do not know, and there's no party, no function going on. And this late morning, it came to me, vivid as day. I said, Queen, why would you get up and open and close a door in the wee hour? And my other half said, Queen, you would only get up to look out your door if you heard a disturbance. Checkmate. Let me say that again. You would only get up back and forth if you heard a disturbance. You heard everything. Every footstep, every squeal, every holler, every bump, every thud, every stomp, every slam, every scream, every holler. That's why you got up in the first place, if I'm to believe this version. You heard everything. And you abandoned your friends on this fateful morning for whatever reason. Because you see, to shut your door and lock it, if I'm to believe that you did this, means absolutely nothing. Because a stranger has walked by you allegedly after murdering your friends and exits out the slider door. Who's to say he wouldn't have come back in? Because allegedly you didn't go and lock the slider door. Then we have to ask, was the slider door able to be locked? And you lied in wait yourself 7.5 hours. Allegedly calling the girls, and we believe this Reddit poster from Ethan Jason's sister-in-law. You stayed in your room, allegedly. But something made you allegedly call this male to your house because you did not want to get up and walk out of your room. That makes no damn sense. You hear a commotion in your house where you live. You get up and open a door at least 3 times. On the 3rd time, you see someone walk by your door with a mask and bushy eyebrows, excuse me. He says nothing to you, you say nothing to him. You shut your door, lock your door. You don't even have enough gumption to fear for your own safety to dial 911, because this is the gist of the story. The perpetrator could have easily slit your throat on sight. Came back in. Damn, I just passed somebody. You never locked the door. So he had an easy way back in. We have to ask ourselves why he would spare you. He was in a fog, tunnel vision. But yet he returns back the next morning after 9 a.m. What did he forget? The sheath and a whole human. Was he contemplating going back in to get the sheath and finish you off? Who's to say? But it makes no damn sense. I told myself, you heard everything, and you did nothing to save your friends. Because the fact that you called this guy, whoever he is, to come over to the house means you heard everything. And it was still on your mind when you got up. Now, whether you went to sleep or not, I do not know. But the fact that you called an entire person to come to the house, to walk around that house, because you feared opening your door to walk around your own house, tells me you heard a disturbance in that house with those kids, your alleged friends, and you turned a blind eye and you did nothing but allegedly shut your door. So what I have to tell myself is the obvious. What proof do we have that you didn't go out and discover Ethan and Xana? You didn't go out and discover Maddie and Kaylee upstairs, bludgeoned to death, and you crawl back into your fucking room and lie in wait until deciding to call somebody else over, daylight savings time, to discover the bodies. Because how convenient would that be? Let me call somebody else and tell them I heard strange things. I'm scared to come out of my room. Could you please come over here and walk around the house and see if you see anything strange? Because you knew they were already dead. You heard the scuffle, the slamming, the bamming, the holler, the screams, the cries. You heard it all. And you did nothing. You didn't think about your friends. You didn't think about preserving your own damn life. Because, hello, Cookie. The killer could have easily killed you on sight. If we're to believe he actually passed the door and saw you, number one. Number two, he could have pushed the door open at any time to see who's behind the door, to see who's in the room. What was to keep Koiberger from breaking the lock? There's nobody to help you. He killed a whole guy. Listen to me good. He killed a whole guy, a 6-foot white male. So who are you to him to not breach a door and slit your throat and stab you up? There were no saviors at 1122 King Road, November 13th. There was nobody to help nobody. You heard everything. I've pondered this now, listening to my last live, and it came to me. I said, she heard everything. That's why she got up in the first place. Because she heard something. Heavy walking, across the floor, up the stairs, dog barking. That's why she got up 3 times. You heard it all. I refuse to believe 4 people died in that house and none of them screamed. None of them hollered. And if we'll believe this relative of Mr. Chapin, allegedly you said they did scream. That there was a scuffle. So in your right mind, you heard all this noise, commotion, thumps, bumps, scuffles, screams, but yet the affidavit tones it down to whimpering. How convenient. Because you knew you couldn't say, I heard thumps, thuds, falling, slamming, crying, moaning, screaming, because you never called 911. So you had to diminish what you actually heard. And the fact you called that guy over proves you heard everything that night. And basically you needed a witness to say he found the bodies, when all along you heard your friends scuffling with Brian C. Koiberger. You heard the dog barking excessively because the dog saw an unidentified person that he did not know. So that's why he was barking. You've heard this person go up and down stairs. You heard this person be confronted by Ethan, Xana. You heard everything. And you never thought to call 911. Huddled in your room listening, or as we would say in the street, ear hustling. You didn't think enough of your own safety, that this thing could also breach your door and cut you up. We also hear that you did call the roommates and got no answer after the screaming stopped. And that is so illogical to me, that you would dial these girls' numbers, get no answer, and still lie in your room and do God knows what for 7.5 hours. Make it make sense to me. I believe you came out of that room. I believe you saw that Ethan and Xana were butchered. I believe you went upstairs and saw that the two girls were butchered. And perhaps you went down to Bethany's room and slept with her until you all decided to call someone to make it seem like they found the bodies, because you willingly abandoned your friends hours beforehand. What reason you would do this, I do not know. But anybody with their logical thinking head would say, if I'm hearing noises of people screaming, hollering, thuds slamming around, bodies falling around, the logical thing would be to call 911. I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't sound right. So I'm going to call the police and let them handle it. And then I will exit my room when I think authorities are in the house. And what leads me to believe that you knew what happened to your friends is because hours passed, damn near 8 hours, and you call a stranger to come to the house. That shows me you heard everything. You chose not to intervene or call law enforcement. And when you decided to rise from your slumber, if at all you ever slept, you called a complete stranger to come to the house and enter the house to a contaminated crime scene and discover what you already knew was dead. Because, and listen at me carefully, if you had the fortitude to call this guy 7.5 hours later to a crime scene that you already knew had happened and did nothing, you could have used that same discretion to call that same guy after 4 a.m. So did you call this guy to tell him what you heard after calling the girls and got no answer? If we're to believe this version from Ethan Chapin's sister-in-law. And why would she be lying Because then that's going to be very bad to have this tit for tat version. Somebody told her this information. Somebody told her that somebody called. And we know that it's true because the captain said so in a press conference to the public. He verified that the phone call came from inside of the house to 911 at 11:58 a.m. That someone expressed that someone had passed out and that someone was incoherent. So that means this version that we thought took place outside took place inside. And so a third party was inside with the two alleged survivors. And that would lead us only to believe one of you women called someone to the crime scene for some reason. And why would that be? Because possibly you had already seen the dead bodies and you didn't call 911 and you needed to make it look like somebody else found the dead kids. You are the friend that no one needs. Because what we have to tell ourselves is the obvious. The next time something jumps off and Dylan Mortensen is on scene, or Bethany as well, because we don't know her role either, what are you going to do the next time there's distress with one of your friends? You see something terrible happening in the street, at your job, in your home, in your apartment complex. Are you going to also, again, turn a blind eye? Play dumb, play possum. But then later run to the police to give your version after the fact. As they say in the street, with friends like you, who needs enemies? I've dissected this case from top to bottom. I've listened to all said information, and it came to me just a little while ago that you did hear everything. Because the captain of the Moscow Police Department confirmed it, that a third party called from inside of the house. So that means somebody had to have called that person to come to the house. And the obvious question is, why would he be called 7.5 hours later? How did he enter into the house? Who let him in? And why was the description more about you and Bethany than the dead kids in the house? And if people were outside using the terminology that someone inside was dead, then that means somebody from inside of the house called person to person to person to tell them somebody was dead inside of the house. So the word was circulating before the police ever arrived to the scene of the crime. You're pitiful. And what's going to be even worse is if we find out that Bethany was also awake and she heard the disturbances and she did nothing. And then somewhere in the night before daylight, you went to her and discussed what you heard. And she played possum as well. There are no words for what happened at that house. And there are definitely no words for so-called friend or friends never calling 911 to render aid. Because it will be up to a medical examiner to say who could have lived and who could not have lived with 911 being called. And it will be sad to know that someone could have possibly survived on November 13th. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Big Angie, 129 Cash App. Thank you for your time. You have been listening to The Vault. Exhale. That was my commentary from the wee hour this morning. I believe I expressed my thoughts thoroughly during that live stream. And I believe in what I feel, and I believe in my gut instinct, and I also believe in my discerning spirit. And I waited till I heard as much as I could stand to hear before forming this opinion. And two people have already confirmed this information. The captain of the Moscow Police Department and this relative of Ethan Chapin. They both verify that a phone call was made out of 1122 King Road by one of the girls, Bethany or Dylan. They called someone over, a male, if we're to believe this relative's assertion, out of fear of what happened in that house. And that leads me to believe Dylan heard everything in that house. Because if you can call someone at 11:58, 11 a.m., 11:30, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you could have called after 4 a.m. when the atrocity was going down inside of that house. Third floor, second floor. And if an outdoor camera audio can record a dog barking, whimpering, a thud, then there's no way in hell you didn't hear it inside of that residence where you put yourself at the scene, opening and closing doors, and a drunk and inebriated person, possibly even high, would not continue to open a door 3 times. To stand, look out, step out without saying something. Hey, stop. What's going on? What's all the noise about? You're trying to sleep. You got up, Dylan Mortensen, because you heard something that fateful morning. Possibly the dog woke you up, and it commenced from there. I do believe you heard everything that happened in that house, and you did not render aid to your friends, and you did not care about your own safety, because in the end, a killer walked amongst you in that house where you paid rent, where your belongings sat, and he had no regard for life. And whether it was intentional to kill 1, 2, 3, others got in the way, it does not matter. He still walked the floors and walked by your door. And the sad part of the story, besides the deaths of these kids, is that you turned a blind eye. Possibly the other girl was awake and heard the same thing and said nothing. But you didn't care enough for yourself to think that he could have returned or jimmied the door and killed you as well and killed the girl downstairs. And if we're to believe that he's been to this house 12 or more times, he's watched the comings and goings of the house, he's checked license plates, he knew people were there because the cars were there on that fateful morning, but he did not care. And I think you and your friend have not realized that. Brian Koiberger did not care for anyone because he did not care for himself. He does not care for himself. And for whatever reason, he spared you and Bethany. Only God knows why. But a sane person would have tried to get the hell out of there and call 911 to save their friends and also save themselves. And the fact that you called someone to come to the house tells me that you did hear everything. Because let's be truthful. 7.5 hours later, what is the purpose in calling someone to say, I think somebody's here or something strange. How did you word it? Enlighten me. Ring, ring, ring. Hey, are you up? Barely. Can you come over here? I think something happened a few hours ago. I'm scared to open my door. Well, what happened? I don't know. I just need you to come over here. You can come through the slider. It's unlocked. Okay. Did it go like that? Did this person not question why you wouldn't come out of your room allegedly? Did Bethany hear the atrocities on that fateful morning? Was she up? You allegedly dialed these girls? No answer. See, this is how I know you heard everything. Because I asked that question when the affidavit came out. Did Dylan call the girls? The relative says you did. So if you called the girls, you got no answer after the screaming stopped, then why didn't you call that same guy over? That would have been the most appropriate time to call someone. Oh, let me guess. Most people your age at that time on a Sunday morning would possibly be drunk, out of it. Or did you call someone? Same guy. He didn't answer. Seven plus hours shows me you heard everything. And you called this person so he would be the one to find the bodies, because you knew you couldn't logically explain to law enforcement how you heard all this stuff but didn't dial 911. Just huddled in your room out of shock. But somehow 7 hours later, you came out of shock and remembered that something was strange. Now I need a savior to come in and find the carnage. Ridiculous. If you'd like to give your opinion pertaining to this latest information coming from Ethan Chapin's sister-in-law, posted to Reddit a few months ago when this crime transpired afterwards, hit the link in the chat. Thank you for joining me. No, I doubt that they were murdered quietly. I have no idea if she was inebriated. I have no idea if she was high. I do not make any claims that anyone was inebriated or high. Maddie looks like she was a little bit lit just from what I saw on the video surveillance at the grub truck. This is an open discussion. If you have something you'd like to say, feel free to hit the link. It is the latest information circulating on social media. I do believe that information to be factual, because the chief has already, the captain of the Mount Scout Police has said it in commentary. Feel free to go back to my earlier lives where I play you audio from the press conference where he verifies to reporters that the call came from inside of the house and that it was not Bethany or Dylan that made the phone call. That's enough for me to verify she knew exactly what was going on in that house. And the fact this relative comes out and uses different terminology such as scuffles and screams, that means someone had to have told this relative that information. And it is the same information in the affidavit. It's just using different words, more intensified words that would lead one to believe Dylan heard an altercation in the house and heard these young people screaming. That's good enough for me. If you have been chatting inside of the live stream here, feel free to hit the link. If you have not been chatting, you cannot come on the panel. So please stop attempting to get on the panel when you know you have not spoken in the chat. 70 viewing. Thank you for your time. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $ began to 129 Cash App. All stickers and chats are welcome during the live stream. Thank you for your time. Please check out Nancy Grace's commentary. It's posted to my community board pertaining to Brian Kohlberger. As most of you know, he was fired as an assistant before his arrest in Pennsylvania, and she has guest on that show talking about the said subject matter. And it's a very interesting information that was mentioned during that show. Make the live count. Thank you all so much for joining me. That's basically my commentary. If you'd like to rehear that live stream, it is in my library. And also check out my content from last night called Have You Ever? It's very baffling information. And I wondered if anything would come out that would be pertinent to what happened in that house and who all was there and what was actually heard pertaining to the victims. And as I have said before in a previous live, I just refuse to believe that someone would be murdered in the fashion that these children were murdered with other parties in their rooms, that it would be quiet. I can't see that. And it's baffling to know that there was also a male in the house, and he also lost his life defending himself against BK. He did not win the battle. And that's a lot to digest because Ethan was not a small person. He was a man, and he was a tall guy, a big guy, and he did not win. And that's just, it's devastating because you would hope that he would be able to ward this thing off, but he was not able to. Very disturbing information. And I pray that the truth will be revealed during this trial, that these two females will tell the truth. And naturally, with all the scrutiny, criticism, such as this content I'm bringing here, they possibly won't tell the truth. But I believe the truth can reveal itself even if a person decides not to tell it, because your action says a lot. And I've heard it 1,000 times. People react different and all that. That doesn't explain two people confirming that the call came from inside of the house, because most of us thought this happened outside, that these kids were outside, passed out and incoherent. This happened inside. You can't explain why somebody else is in your house using your phone, calling about your friends. And I don't think it needs explanation. A 5-year-old would say, why are you calling this person here? Why are you not calling the police to say, I fear coming out of my room. I think something transpired. I've been in here scared. Could you please come over? The glass slider is open if you need to gain entry. Or I'll call the other girl downstairs and she can open the front door for you. Simple, just like that. This is strange to me. But it's not maybe strange Trifling is the appropriate word. And that's my opinion. Because you called somebody. And that has nothing to do with reaction. You have no reason calling somebody else and you hear people fighting and screaming. You're scared to come out of your room. You're afraid of being hurt. You call the police. You don't call another kid. Just like if your house was on fire. You smell smoke. Are you going to continue to sit in your room and watch the room fill up with smoke and then go call somebody? Hey, I'm in a burning house. Well, what can they do for you? Because I think the person on the other line would say, well, get out of your house. That's the case when you definitely will run out if your house was on fire. Because this guy's unstable. This Koiberger creature. Angry, bitter, mad. So he could have easily killed you. Why he didn't, I don't know. Many people are asking that question. And as I said, it is not to wish death on the two remaining roommates, but one would have to question, why were you spared? Especially if he saw you. Because I have to ask myself, am I dealing with a person that's wanting to be caught? He wanted to be caught? Because of all the things he did, he left a blueprint by going to the scene with his phone 12 times before, going into someone's DM allegedly, following them on social media, lying in wait, possibly going to the university to watch them, possibly going to a job. God forbid, whatever's on devices and computers. He did not plan this thoroughly. He didn't plan this at all. Well, obviously she heard what went on because she did peek out the door. She stood in the doorway when the killer walked by. She opened the door 3 times. So obviously she wanted to hear what was going on. So your comment doesn't make any sense. That's the whole purpose of her getting up, is because she did hear something. And the fact that she continuously got up, opening and closing the door. You don't think the killer wouldn't walk by you at some point, opening and closing the door? Oops, I forgot he did, didn't he? Allegedly. So make it make sense. If I'm so scared, I wouldn't open the door at all. So you're contradicting yourself. Can't say you're scared and frozen, but you continue to open a door during the commission of a crime. Are you all following that information? You open the door 3 times, but on the 3rd time, you're frozen. And you stay in your room for hours and call a complete stranger to come over and find the bodies. Because I believe she came out of that room and she knew that the kids were dead. Why do you think she called their phones? Checkmate. Because something got her up in the first place. Number 1. Number 2, you couldn't have been that scared because you continue to open and close the door knowing if there's a killer there, he would see you. Number 3, you waited to call the kids after the noise stopped. Allegedly. So you don't have any proof of what actually went on in that house. For all I know, she could have went and made a smoothie while he was cutting up her friends. Hell, why not? If you're bold enough to keep opening the door, you're bold enough to just go on out there in the fucking kitchen and just pour yourself a drink. Because if you can call someone daylight savings time, then that means you heard everything. And you could have done the same after 4 a.m. What's the difference? Make me understand the difference between after 4 a.m. and after 11 a.m. What is the difference? You're frozen in shock. But somehow you come out of shock to call a complete stranger to come to your house. Why? Because you wanted him to find the bodies. Because you knew you ditched your friends. So what better excuse to use somebody else? You see, I dissect things from top to bottom. I think before I even repeat a theory. I talk it out in my head first. I don't make up stuff. I don't assume stuff. I talk it out in my head first. And it came to me yesterday or this morning. Why would a person wait 7 hours to call someone? Because they did hear it and they know and they knew how it would look if they called the police themselves at 12 o'clock noon. Because imagine you're calling 911. They're going to listen at everything that you're saying. And foolishly, she puts herself there, which is striking to me. Because I wouldn't have even said anything. I would have just said I slept through the whole thing. Because people do lie. And that's what messed her up, in my opinion. Now, it's up to the district attorney if they want to say, we're charging you for negligence of these victims. Naturally, because it's so horrific, they probably won't. But she was there. And she alludes to the fact she heard things. So it was her choice not to call. It was her choice not to run out of there. But she knew to call somebody hours later. So that really makes no sense. What good is it to call somebody 7.5 hours later? That shows that you still had that event on your mind. 7.5 hours later. Make it make sense. See, you have to pay attention to the details. She told on herself. I called a friend instead of 911 7 hours later. Well, at this point, there's no threat 7 hours later. The killer is gone. They didn't find Kohlberger watching a movie in the living room. They didn't see him outside on the couch smoking a cigarette. Because he was gone. And she assumed he was gone. And you have no idea if she ever left that room or not. I have a feeling she did. I have a feeling she left out of that room. She found those dead kids. She went and called Bethany. Cannot verify if Bethany got up, answered the phone during that morning, but at some point the two met up. And they collectively decided to call someone to come to the house. That shows me she knew something bad had happened in that house. And possibly she smelled death when she woke up. Checkmate. If she ever fell asleep. Dylan acted as if she didn't even live at 1122 King Road. If I didn't know any better, I would think she's staying in a hotel, a boarding house. because her behavior is of somebody that's living in a boarding house or a hotel. See nothing, hear nothing. They're fighting down the hall. They're fighting across the hall. Oh, well, none of my concern. That was her attitude, in my opinion. And that's my opinion. Because a lot of you act like her. You act as if she didn't even live there. She was a visitor hearing a fight, and she just said, well, it's not my concern, not my house. I'll worry about it later. That was her behavior, as if she was a visitor at 1122 King Road. So maybe we should even ask her, did you live at the house, or you were just visiting? Because I don't know too many people that would hear that in their own house and do nothing. Especially if they had access to a phone. Now, I don't say go out, confront the killer. But when you're opening and closing doors, if the noise is bothering you, are you the type to say something, or you're just the type to look? And if a person is drunk, usually they go straight to sleep. They don't get up opening and closing doors. Most of the people I know that get drunk, they don't open and close the doors. Rather, somebody had a TV loud, they just go to sleep. So this might be a new type of drunk. They called someone over, and I just going to go ahead and say it. They basically called somebody over to be the alibi to find the bodies. And that's just how I feel right now. Because there's no other way for me to look at it. Are you entitled to look at the information how you see fit? But getting this new information from Chapin's relative, it confirms what the captain of the police department has already said. He's not retracted his statement, so the statement stands. Somebody else was in that house that called 911. So that shows somebody else was at a crime scene before law enforcement got there. That's not gossip. That's not innuendo. That's not an assumption. And that is the rumor that went to social media immediately before we even had a suspect arrested. So then we have the rumor on social media defending the two. We have the captain saying something a month and a half later in regard to the same information. And now in the month of February 2023, we have a relative saying the same damn thing. The only difference is now it's a scuffle and it's a scream, which is way worse than whimpering. We don't know what the outcome could have been because we weren't there, and we don't have someone telling us which wound caused the fatal death. Until I hear from the coroner which wound caused the fatal death, I can't say who could have lived and who could have died, because many people have been stabbed numerous times and they have lived. A woman was stabbed 17 times and she lived. That's the point. You don't know until a coroner says, this is the wound number 16, 17, 10, 11 caused the death immediately, or within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. The point is, we're not going to know because nobody called 911. And if you will downplay being there and acting like it was no big deal, who's to say she didn't go out of the room? And if she called the girls, then she knew something was wrong. There's your proof right there. That's why I tell people, listen to the information. Sometimes you don't have to have a confession. You don't have to have a person tell you, yes, I heard everything. Yes, I watched everything. Yes, I turned a blind eye. Yes, I let my friends die. Yes, I let them down. Listen to the information. She called the kids after the screaming stopped. Well, 2 have already been bleeding out, if already dead. Got no answer. Bells should have been going off at this point. And that's the whole point. We weren't there to really hear how loud it was in the house. No way I believe 4 people died silently on November 13th. I refuse to believe it. Bring me a receipt that everyone's neck was cut on impact and it rendered them from speaking or screaming. And we know that's not true because audio says otherwise. She chose not to call for whatever reason. She called someone to come over to be the alibi to find the kids because she knew it would not look right if she called and then tell them, yeah, I heard a lot of stuff going on, but I didn't call because I froze. But 7 hours later, I unfroze, but I still knew that something had happened. So now you're contradicting your statements. Because you can't say 7 hours later, I felt frightful about getting up, but I didn't think to call 911 7 hours before. And instead of calling 911 7 hours later, I called somebody else to come to the house and let him be the scapegoat to call. Let me repeat that. I need a scapegoat to call 911. And that's where she messed up, was calling that guy. Because you call the guy 7 hours later, but then you give a report, you heard stuff going on. So now a seasoned detective would say, well, that makes no sense. You heard all this stuff going on. You open and close doors. You don't yell out and ask the kids what the hell they're doing. You call the kids after the screaming stopped. You don't go back out of the room. You lie in your room for 7 hours. And then you call a complete stranger over to discover the bodies that 9 times out of 10 you had to have known were dead anyway. Because 1, something made you get up. 2, you kept opening and closing doors. 3, you saw somebody go by your room that you did not know. 4, you woke up on suspicion, allegedly. All those things show she heard what went on in that house. The big question is, why didn't she call 911 if she was afraid to step out of the room? But you really can't even say that she had fear, because a fearful person wouldn't have even opened the door. Bingo card. 3 times. Because what are the odds of opening and closing the door during the commission of a crime? Is that the perpetrator could walk by me, see me, hear me. Oops, he did. Damn. Imagine that. Make it make sense. Fearful, frozen. But I'm opening and closing doors while the killer is in this small demographic. But yet he spares me and another one. Yet he knows this house. He's watched this house. He has seen us coming and going. And 9 times out of 10, he's done his research on us. But yet he did not care when he came to this house knowing it had cars in the parking lot, because he didn't care. So he spared me. Why? But vigorously cleans his car a month later in Pennsylvania, where his gloves to empty trash make it make sense. He returned hours later. Why? Did he forget something? Oh, yes, he did. The knife case. I can't go in. They'll see me. They'll see me come out. Daytime. Someone can describe me even with a mask on. Better not do that. Let me check out my handiwork. Oops! Nobody's up yet. No ambulance. No fire department. No police. No crowd. Damn. You see, the truth is at the beginning of the story. I tell my viewers this all the time. The truth is not at the middle. The truth is not at the end of the story. The truth is at the very beginning. And if you listen to the information carefully, you listen at the commentary from the people in the story, that is where the truth lies. And that remember that anything said in a story is just a version. It is entirely up to you to decide if what you have heard is the truth. And with any story told, whether it is about murder or not, a person will have the propensity to lie. And if a thing could stalk girls, hunt them down, and walk in their house and murder them, and people assume he was a okay guy, kind of weird, kind of quirky, then somebody in that house that lived can lie and be no different than Koiberger, just possibly not a murderer. You don't know people. I listen to people talk all the time who will tell you they would never call 911. Even if they saw it happen out the window, because they don't want to get involved. And I told you that the other day, that I spoke to an elderly woman who said, I don't know nothing. I don't hear nothing. I don't answer my door. If I hear you out there hollering, screaming, I ain't looking. I ain't calling. I ain't giving my name. Now imagine having that attitude and you live in a house with other people. Your assumption is that the two are truthful, but you do not know them, just like you don't know the dead and you don't know Koiberger. You're listening to people's versions of who they were and who they are. But that ain't good enough, because that's not knowing them. People lie every day. As I've brought you content before, a sociopath is not necessarily a murderer. A psychopath is not necessarily a murderer. A liar isn't necessarily a murderer. A thief is not necessarily a murderer, but a murderer can be all of the above. Checkmate. No way that girl didn't hear what happened. Her actions tell me she did. And the captain confirmed it. And this lady put the icing on the cake. Triple threat. That possibly both heard what went down in that house. And they waited foolishly 7+ hours. Why? I do not know. Because your cell phone has nothing to do with nothing. You can whisper into your phone, please get here. I think my friends are being hurt. I'm in the room off the kitchen. The door is closed and locked. I will not come out until you identify yourself as a police officer. And you leave the line open until authorities get there. You don't continuously dial numbers after the screaming stops and then just sit there wondering why no one's answering. You know you heard these people talking. Allegedly, you heard a dog barking. You heard someone say, someone's here. You heard someone say, I'm going to help you. You heard whimpering coming from Xana's room. And you don't find it strange that out of the blue, it stops after seeing a strange person walk by your room? You call the phones, nobody answers, and you let this commence for 7+ hours, and I'm supposed to logically say, oh, that's okay, she was scared. And as I've said before, while I'm on this live stream, do you think I'm going to continue to live stream with someone now crawling through my window? I'll wait. Someone is walking towards me while I'm on this live stream, and I'm supposed to continue to go live. I'm supposed to be frozen and say nothing. I think at some point you're going to hear something go down on this computer. What do you think? So explain to me what's the damn difference. Because you're in a locked room. I'm sitting out in the open in my living room. Make it make sense. Dylan heard everything. That is the reason why she got up in the first place. It's because she heard a disturbance in her house. And she continued to open and close the door and heard conversations. And I do believe she heard screams, not whimpering. I do believe she heard a scuffle, a slam. Ethan was 6 feet tall plus. You want me to believe he fell to the ground like a feather? Both lying on the ground, and you want me to believe that didn't make any noise? In a house where there is dead silence. Make it make sense now. Exactly. What was to keep him from kicking in the door? There was nobody there to save anybody. I've said that 1,000 times when we found out 2 were living. People argue up and down. He didn't want to make any noise. He didn't want to make any noise, but he did. Because there's audio with sounds on it. You want me to believe he's fighting a man as big as him and that wouldn't be noisy? There's no grunting, moaning, then what is Xana doing if she died last, let's say, while her boyfriend is scuffling with the killer, being cut and fighting? She's just standing there. Is that what you want me to believe? You want me to believe that possibly she didn't even intervene trying to get this man off of her boyfriend? So we don't even know if Xana intervened or not, because we don't know her. Could it be she intervened to try to help Ethan? Because we don't know which was the blow that led him to fall. It is stated they all were stabbed multiple times. Not one, not two, all four. So this girl possibly intervened while her boyfriend was being brutally stabbed. Stop, get off of him, leave him alone. Why are you doing this? Who are you? Why are you here? We don't know you. Why are you doing this? Please stop. Does that sound like whimpering to you? I wasn't there, but the relative says that they were screaming. So, which they? Dylan? Because you told this to somebody. Who was screaming, Dylan? Kaylee? Maddie? Xana? Ethan? 1, 2, 3, 4? Who was screaming? Should you have been scared in your room? Of course. But you couldn't have been that scared because you opened the door 3 times. He killed at least 4 minutes per victim. And you're opening the door 3 times in a 16-minute interval. Stupid. I am not. 16 minutes at least. 16 minutes. 16 minutes. 4 minutes per victim. And you want to tell me she heard nothing? Bullshit. Bullshit. Let me say this to Dylan and Bethany both. I don't know Bethany's role. We will find out in court. But Dylan, I don't know what your problem was that day, but you failed your friends. And that is Queen's opinion. And I give this opinion now with this new information coming from Ethan Chapin's family member. And I don't believe they're lying, because somebody had to have told them that information. And it's the same that came from the captain of the police department. And he has not retracted. Somebody else was in the house. Somebody else called. And that is the same rumor that came out before the police ever spoke. So there's some truth to that. Because he wouldn't tell the reporters who made the call, just that it wasn't you and Bethany. So now we glazed over that until now, with a second person confirming it is true. What else do we need? Because it shows you came out of your frozen state hour 7. And instead of coming out of the frozen state and dialing 911 as a decent human would do that's afraid to come out of their room, you call your fucking friend. For what? What the fuck can your friend do? Because you knew. It's sitting right in front of us. You knew all along they were hurt. And you probably will never tell anybody that you walked your ass out of that damn room and you saw that they were dead. You saw a trail. And you went back in your room and you acted like you didn't. And that is callous. That is vile. And I know in your weakest moment, you will tell somebody. And they will tell the world, you came out of that damn room and you saw your friends dead and you still didn't call 911, and you use the innocent person to be the scapegoat to find those kids. That's my theory. I stand on it. I stand on that. You use that boy to be the alibi to find your friends. It's obvious. Because if you can call him hours later to come to the house, you could have called him at 4 a.m. or 911. Take your pick. But you didn't. I do not know if you know BK. I do not know if Bethany knows him. I do not ride with the conspiracy that you knew him. I do not ride with the conspiracy that drugs were in the house. I do not ride with the conspiracy that this is drug related. They told you in the beginning this is not drug related. But I know you turned a blind eye and deserted your friends for some crazy ass reason. Why? I do not know. It could be the age old. You didn't give a fuck about Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. Could it be you had ill will before Brian Kohlberger stepped in that house? Could it be there was envy, jealous between all of you? They weren't your pick and you weren't theirs. You were just living in that house. Just a lump of clay. Because we find out a lot of times in true crime that there was underlying issues that were not resolved at the time of death. Is that the reason why you didn't call 911? Fuck them. Fuck them. We didn't get along anyway. You all are looking at those IG pictures with us all huddled together like we're besties. It was never like that. Is that what happened November 13th, ma'am? Is that why there was no saving your friends? It's because you all really weren't friends. Yeah, I'm going to go on out there on a limb today because I ain't got nothing to lose. Because I know women because I'm a woman. And I know that people speak and talk to each other when they don't like each other. I know that women will call people they really don't give a fuck about. I know that women will hang with people they really don't like and care about. They'll sit next to them in the cubicle despising them. They'll live in the same house with them because they don't have no option to get out of there yet. Checkmate. Did you have ill feelings toward your roommates? Dylan Mortensen, Bethany Funk. Did you all have ill will toward those girls? Did they have ill will towards you two? Did you say the hell with it? I'll wait later. It'll be all right. But it wasn't all right. Because your friends were bludgeoned to death. Alleged friends, and they died, bled out, possibly died after so many wounds. I don't know. I'm not the coroner. But I know they died a gruesome death. And it's a death I wouldn't wish on anyone because that is the most frightful thing, to be trying to preserve your life and you're fighting this thing that has rage in his eyes, rage in his heart for no reason. He doesn't know me, but he hates me and he's killing me. And nobody cares enough to call 911, and I'm screaming for help. And you're sitting in your fucking room listening to me take my last breath. How do you sleep with yourself? How do you walk around, take a run, and you didn't call 911 for your roommates? Because I won't doubt that there was some ill will at some point between all of you. Because you see, a picture is just what it is, a picture. A pic. A pic means nothing when there's ill will, ill intent, animosity, jealousy, envy, hate, rage, anger, contempt. I don't have to let somebody know I really don't like that bitch upstairs on the 3rd floor. Checkmate. I don't have to let people know I don't like the bitch around the corner on the 2nd floor. Checkmate. I don't have to let people know they're always talking about the 2 blondes all the time. And I'm going to tell you why I'm saying this. Because it happens. And the way some of you've talked about Maddie and Kaylee is the proof in the pudding. The way the father talked about Kaylee, as if she was the only one murdered. Checkmate. The way people describe the 2 in articles. Kaylee's name first. Checkmate. As if nobody else died in that house but Kaylee and Maddie. So if outsiders who don't even know these kids were revering them the most in a horrific story of 4 bludgeon, what do you think it was like for the girls who lived in the house with Kaylee and Maddie? What do you think it was like with the other friends and sorority members? Cliques. Stay woke now. This is why I tell you all, you have to pay attention to the details. Some of you've done it in the chat, possibly not even realizing. You all talked about them the most. At the beginning of this story, when this crime made national news, who was talked about the most in the headlines? Who got the most attention when the story broke? When you read news articles, whose name was first listed as the victim? Now flip it over and imagine being the ones in the house with those 2. The ones that got the most attention in life. Listen to me carefully. They probably got more attention in life, and even in death, you all gave it to them. You gave these 2 girls the most attention in the news, in the media, your YouTube videos, Facebook posts. You gave those 2 blondes the most attention when there was a brunette and a brunette guy. So now imagine the 2 who are surviving, living in the house under the 2 pretty blondes. Checkmate. You see, I pay attention to what most of you don't. I always tell people there's always more to the story, whether there's a conspiracy or a setup or not, because you don't know people and you don't know the intent of man and woman. You don't know their true identity. You don't know their true feelings. You don't know who really didn't like somebody. You don't know who really didn't give a fuck about somebody. You're just riding the wave with the news story, but you better stay woke because you might miss something. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $ Big Angie, 129 Cash App, stickers and chats, and welcome to all my live streams. Please check out my content in my library. The truth is at the beginning of the story. And you're entitled to your opinion on what you believe and don't believe. I do not deal in rhetoric, lies, gossip. Bring me a receipt. But I believe everything I'm thinking and saying, I believe it to be truth. Because I pay attention. I listen first before I speak and come up with a theory. And I told people I would never accuse anybody of murder of the Idaho 4 until they bring me a suspect with evidence. But the one thing I can say for sure is that in that house was possibly ill will when there was life. And somebody decided not to call 911 for whatever reason. And the proof is already in the pudding. When that girl decided to call that guy hours later, she showed me she knew what happened to her friends and she heard what happened to her friends. And I do not know if Bethany had any idea she was up during this event, but Dylan was up. And she got up because she heard a disturbance. And when she decided to call the kids after they screamed, the screaming stopped. That shows me there she knew something was wrong. That's why she called them. And yet no response. That should have been her cue, 911. But she didn't. Should have called that guy friend. But allegedly she didn't. She waits hours to call him and uses him as the alibi to find the kids because she knew it wouldn't look right with she and or Bethany being in that house that entire time with the carnage left behind and not have heard anything. Now, naturally, a person could have just lied and said, well, I slept through it. So we will wait to hear if Bethany says she slept through the entire night. And where Dylan fucked up is by telling the police in the report she heard this and that and opening and closing doors and waited 7 hours to call 911, but she used somebody else to do it. And anybody that has any sense and has detective work should see there's something wrong there. Because if you can call somebody at 11 a.m., 10 a.m., you could have done it at 4 a.m. And possibly one of those kids could have lived. I thank you for joining me and following the content you have been listening to, The Vault XL.